Going into fall camp, who were some names, and I mentioned one earlier in Elijah Simmons, but who were some names where their opportunity to produce may be classified as now or never?
This guy we hadn't talked much about this offseason, his name is Joe Milton III. He plays quarterback, and it feels like this is now or never for Joe, because this is now or never. I went down the roster, and nobody really jumped out at me as guys who have waited their turn, and now it's their turn to be in the spotlight, and now it's time to produce and kind of step up and make a name for themselves. But with Joe, he's waited his turn. He's transferred. He's won the job, and he's lost the job with an ankle injury, and had to sit and watch him and do it for 2 years. And now it's his turn because he's out of time. The clock's ticking. Now it's time to produce and be the man from day one, from game one, from the first drive, and kind of make his name in this offense this second time around. I went down the roster, and Joe was the biggest name just the name that jumped out, I guess.
You hate to do this so early, but Brent, would maybe an Addison Nichols fall in this category?
Yeah, it's too early in his career. Okay. he's been in the program. He's just the backup.
Just because there's opportunities now, I guess.
Right, but if he doesn't win the left guard spot in fall camp, I don't think anybody in the program is going to go, all right, he can't play, we're moving on. Somewhere else. That's it. He's missed his opportunity. I don't think that's the scenario at all there. With him. And, again, Elijah Simmons is a guy who's at the end of his career. It is, on defense, it's now or never for him. He's got a lot of ability. Anybody you talk to, Austin, will tell you when he wants to, when he goes as hard as he wants to and puts it all together, he can play on Sundays and make money. It's just, can he stay healthy, and does he want to do that like that? Offensively, I'm with Grant. Could you throw Caleb Webb as a second-year player in there? I don't know that that's fair to any of those young receivers right now to say it's now or never for them. But, this is Joe's chance, and we'll see how Joe capitalizes on it.
Guys, the simple answer is Nico. It's now or never. He's watching.
What is your expectation for Joe running the football this year? He's been reluctant to pull it down in the past. This is one area, of course, we've talked about it, where Hendon Hooker has excelled and could possibly be a drop-off this year in the offense.
He was asked about that on SEC Nation, talking about how Hendon ran it the last couple of years and how they're going to ask Joe to run it, if it's going to be similar, whatever the emphasis is going to be. And, Heupel can answer it better than I can. He basically said he's going to have to do it, and they're going to have to see it. And it's an area of growth that he has to show them. He has to take basically what he can get when it's there to stay ahead of the sticks and then kind of keep things moving. And that's pocket presence. He's not going to run it like Hendon did. He's a completely different quarterback, but it's got to be something where it's going to be part of the scheme. There's going to be design quarterback runs, and there's also going to be times where he just has to use his eyes and make his reads. And if he sees something where he has to get it, and just go get it like Hendon did at times.
Hubbard, a year ago when Joe was the backup, we actually did see him run the ball more and lower his head more and be a little more forceful than he did the year before in those first few games when he was the starter. Then once he came in when Hendon was injured and they didn't have a lot of depth, you didn't see that. And I think that was probably by design, because Tennessee didn't really have much behind him and couldn't afford to do similar things. So my question is what does he look like early in the year? Because there will be more depth behind him, so to speak. And, you potentially could run him more.
Well, first of all, throw everything about the Vanderbilt game with Joe Milton out the window, in my opinion, because they got a lead on that one, and they said, you're not going to run it and get hurt, and we're not going to ask you to throw it in the rain in any kind of skilled situation. We'll throw some deep balls on third and long, third down. If we don't convert it, we'll punt, or we'll hand it off and we'll run for 487,000 yards, which is what they ultimately ended up doing in that game. So I take that game out of the equation. Now, what's interesting in the Clemson game, much to my surprise, probably 3 or 4 times maybe, they ran a straight sweep with Joe Milton, which was obviously something they saw on tape that they thought they could attack and get after Clemson with. So how many of those type plays are there? We'll see. But I think Grant said it best. It's the bigger question is, can he feel it? Can he take and eliminate a negative play and turn it into a positive, or turn it into a net zero? Hendon turned it into 20 yards, right? We saw that against Alabama. We saw it against Florida early in the game where he turned a bust into an 18-yard run or whatever it was. I don't know that Joe's going to do a lot of that, but Joe has to avoid the 8-yard sack. He's got to avoid those types of plays. And I think that's the bigger question I have with Joe running the football, as opposed to how many design plays they run for Joe running the football. It's can he mask an offensive line or a tight end bust or a running back pickup bust with his legs the way Hendon did. And I don't know how effective he can be at that. Oh, only time's going to tell there.
I will say this. If they ran for that many yard tubs, that's the equivalent of 276 miles. You're pretty impressive.
Check the stats. Check the stats.